Merry late Christmas, everybody. All is calm, all is fright this Christmas because boy oh boy, we were given a great little gift this year from Robert Eggers. You know what I'm talking about. The 1922 remake of Nosferatu.
Standing before me was death. But I'd never been so happy.
Nosferatu follows a real estate salesman, Thomas, who travels to Transylvania to sell a castle to a mysterious count named Orlok, who's actually a vampire and obsessed with Thomas's wife, Ellen, which leads to a series of terrifying events as Orlok attempts to prey upon her and spread plague throughout her town. Robert Eggers is the writer and director of Nosferatu, and he typically does historical horror films that blend folklore, mythology, and horror, best known for The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman. His meticulous attention to historical accuracy and just the cinematic quality that he brings to the industry is what makes his work really appealing for many. I will say what he is known for is shown on full display here in Nosferatu, because visually this movie is a masterpiece. A masterpiece that in turn creates a really fitting atmosphere to tell the story in. The film relies on dark shadows to obscure details and create a sense of unease. The color throughout is really pretty muted, almost to evoke a sense of hopelessness and decay. They incorporate various black and white scenes, especially the ones with the vampire in it, which I thought was a pretty unique stylistic choice. And the camera angles and the shots throughout seem very deliberate, solidifying the thorough approach they took in creating this almost ominous atmosphere. And on top of the filming and the lighting techniques used, you can really tell that the settings and the costumes are carefully crafted to emphasize the gothic undertones and the historical relevance to the time period. This one's set in the 1830s. My favorite scene actually in the movie is one where the character Thomas is on his journey to see the Count, and we see him almost in a trance-like state walking down a long, dark, isolated pathway. The snow is falling just so beautifully, and it's nighttime, it's dark, but you still see the snow falling through like a light in the upper center of the screen, and it's just really pretty. And then we see an empty horse and drawn carriage at the very end of the pathway, pulled by these absolutely beautiful black horses, and it starts to approach him, and the lighting is perfect, and the atmosphere is just so kind of beautiful yet unsettling. I love this scene. The scene isn't really even all that significant, which is the funny part about it, but I think what it does show is that each and every scene filmed in this movie is so precise, and you can tell that no detail was overlooked in how they intended the audience to experience it and experience the atmosphere that they've created throughout the entirety of the movie. So it goes without saying, the cinematography and the visuals throughout in this movie are definitely my favorite part of it. But let's talk about pace. This one's a slow burn, no doubt, and I typically love the slow burn approach. However, I'm gonna say I think this one was slightly too sluggish. And granted, this one just came out, but I've already heard a couple of stories of people falling asleep during this one, and I have to say, I'm not surprised. Not only is the pace pretty slow, but I think that the plot does kind of meander a bit. Couple that with how the characters speak and how they deliver the dialogue. It's very reminiscent of the time period, which is something Robert Eggers is really great at. But with how they talk, it's kind of unengaging. For some people, I could see it's a 10 out of 10 sleep sentence for sure if you have a very short attention span or you fall asleep very easily in movies. It's also a bit long. I think that the movie's a little over 2 hours. I believe it's 2 hours, 15 minutes, something like that. So it's a little bit of a longer movie. Obviously, the plot is a little bit drawn out, so some people, I could see how that could frustrate some people. This wasn't really an issue for me because it is what I expected, but for those that aren't too familiar with Robert Eggers' style, or those that don't really like the slow burn approach, you might not dig this one. I think you might find that the pace, the way the dialogue is conveyed, and maybe the length is a bit frustrating at times. But let's talk about another high point of the movie, which of course is the acting. Here we have Lily Rose Depp, who gives a great performance as Ellen, Nicholas Hoult, who plays Thomas, Willem Dafoe, of course, who is the professor who was a scientist turned occultist, and finally my favorite, Bill Skarsgård, who of course plays the Count. God damn, he is unrecognizable in this film. I knew he was in it, and I actually didn't know that he was playing the vampire, so I was like, who the heck? And then when I didn't see him in any of the other scenes, I was like, that's Bill. I love that he's playing these characters that make him almost unrecognizable, like Pennywise. How often do we see Hollywood give a man who is extremely attractive a role role where you can't even recognize him, and they like basically alter his face so much so he can't even rely on his looks. I mean, it goes without saying, I think that he's just a great actor, and I really liked him in this role as Count Orlok. So something else I like about Nosferatu actually is the storyline in general. We have so many vampire movies, as you guys know, but I find this story a little bit more unique than most. You've got vampire in love with a woman, and vampires almost manipulating this woman into being with him, like willingly. It's kind of unique, and then add on the rat-like depiction of him. It's kind of a cool premise, to be honest. So, and I really do also like both the antagonist and the general plot that we get in Nosferatu. Unfortunately, I do feel like Eggers was slightly weak on the development of the story, I have to be honest, because the central connection between the vampire and Ellen, I think, could have been more developed. Give us a little bit more context into how that started, and just a little bit more. I wanted more from that story. After all, that relationship really is the core of the movie. And of course, some of the decisions made by our characters are just like, bruh, come on. Okay, we've got Thomas signing something in a language that he can't even understand, and then we've got a scene where the crew goes out to slay the vampire when it's getting dark outside. And I get it, they're on a time crunch, but bruh, we're gonna go slay a vampire when it's getting dark? Come on! Bruh. Be better. To add on, I do feel like a lot of the characters did lack a little bit of depth as well, which kind of makes it hard to connect with them, therefore making it kind of hard to feel for them as things start to go south and things start to get a little bit more bleak and bad for the characters throughout the movie. But overall, guys, I'm gonna say, you know, this is visually stunning, and that's a huge high point of the film. Something we don't get all that much, something pretty special, something we gotta hold on to, right? I think that they perfectly embodied the gothic horror theme, and definitely put their time into crafting that aspect of the film. However, because they obviously put their time and effort into that front, I do think they did overlook a couple of things, such as the general pace and a little bit of the storyline and the development within it. But I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5, and that's mainly because of how well crafted I do think it is in general and the unique adaptation of it. Also, I give this a little bit of an edge because I'm a little bit biased in the sense that I love vampire horror and I love gothic horror, so this is up my alley. But let's see what the general consensus is for this one. Oh, interesting. Okay, average audience score is a 3. I'm actually surprised by that because I thought that I was being a little bit harsh on that. I thought that people would give it even higher than a 4. To be honest, I was a little bit between the score of a 3.75 and a 4, but I ultimately landed on 4. It looks like it's pretty polarizing, like this always is. I always say this to you guys, take this with a grain of salt, but lots of 1s, lots of 5s. I wonder if maybe expectations weren't met, or maybe it was because of that sort of slow burn approach that I think that for some people, honestly, it might be a little bit boring. So just know what you're getting yourself into, as I know you guys do because you guys are horror fans like me. But 87% Rotten Tomatoes is really good. 7.9 out of 10 IMDb. So yeah, I mean, obviously it looks like you either love it or you hate it, and to be honest, I think that is totally fair for this movie. So guys, though, I would personally recommend this to people who love historical horror and vampire horror. Of course, actually the main people that I would recommend this to is people that love Robert Eggers. You'll know what you're getting into, and I think you'll love it. Even if you don't like horror though, and you like a time period kind of gothic piece, you might actually dig this. It's not super scary. There's obviously some jump scares that got me, as always, but it's really not that bad on the scares. But you know, one thing is for certain, those that do appreciate cinematography and just kind of the beauty of filmmaking in general, I think that you'll really at least appreciate this, if not really love it. However, like I said before, if you have a short attention span or you hate a slow burn, you might not love this one, and if that is you, I would personally wait until this comes out to streaming, because it's better if you fall asleep watching this in your own home on the couch than fall asleep in a movie that you just paid $10 for, right? You don't want to waste your money. So that's my recommendation. But overall for me, I'm gonna say I think Eggers' version is really kind of a cool mismatch of inspirations coming together to create a well-inspired yet still original piece in its own right. And there you have it, guys. My thoughts on Nosferatu. But what did you guys think? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know. And thank you guys for watching, and catch me next time. Peace.